Hello, and welcome back to the Cybersecurity and Cloud podcast. This is your host, Francesco, and today we come back with another episode on application security. We've been talking a lot about application security of late, and we've been interviewing a lot of people from OWASP and expect more and more in the upcoming episode. And I am a little bit biased because I've been focusing more on Security Phoenix, or now called Application Security Phoenix. And if you don't know the project, have a look at www.appsecphoenix.com. We're focusing a lot on vulnerability management and application security. But in these episodes, we focus effectively on how to go from DevOps into more security, and how effectively a professional that want to move forward in his development career can insert slowly but surely effectively security in the pipeline and in the life cycle. And in order to do so effectively, Martin has served in a lot of part of OWASP, from the Netherlands chapter all the way to the board, and then back and forth. And we explore a little bit what that means. But most importantly, I am really passionate about showing what open source and OWASP projects are out there. And today we touch a little bit on the SKF, that is the Security Knowledge Framework. So I hope this you can get all some information out of this, and I hope this is informational for everybody. This is your host, Francesco. I hope you enjoy the episode. Stay safe and stay AppSec safe.
Welcome to the Cybersecurity and Cloud podcast, where we hear the stories of information security professionals. This podcast explores different angles, out-of-the-box ideas, and the human element of cybersecurity. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider leaving us a review on Apple Podcast and supporting us at www.patreon.com/CSCP so we can continue to bring on amazing guests. You can watch videos of the interviews at www.cybercloudpodcast.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Cybersecurity and Cloud podcast. Today, we go back on the world of application security, and we have Martin, let me try to pronounce it in German, Knobloch. Almost there.
Yeah, it's the pronounced K. It makes a difference.
All right.
Francesco,
Knobloch.
Thanks for having me.
Almost there. My German is so rusty, Martin. But Martin has been with OWASP for a very long time. Right now, he's the Global Application Strategist and Micro Focus, and he can talk more about the experience in OWASP. He's been with OWASP for a really long time, from a chapter to the global board to different roles. But Martin, maybe you can talk to the audience a little bit, for who doesn't know you, what you've been up to and where you're coming from into OWASP, and a little bit of your history.
Right, so let's try to do the Martin Knobloch in 5 minutes thing. When you get older, it's getting harder and harder. I haven't been busy. So actually, I have been a developer, a self-trained developer. I moved to development at the end of the 90s of last century. Makes it sound longer ago than it actually is. It's more than 20 years ago. So before that, I was a mechanic, and I moved to software development via PLC programming, like industrial development. I worked at a company, and in 2005, I was so surprised about the level of missing security in software development and the web application, because back then we had a big hype. The first bubble was already gone. We went into the second hype of online marketing, and there was no security. So I said, let's do something with security. And I encountered an OWASP who had the first application, the AppSec conference in Belgium. So it was the second conference in Europe. The first one that actually was branded as AppSec conference. And I live in the Netherlands, so it was very close by for me. So I went there, and should I say, I got hooked by OWASP. I came home and was like, wow, because it makes a difference if you are a long-term security professional or a newcomer, a new developer. Everybody was welcome with open arms, and this community, this openness of the community, that really caught me. So I came back to the Netherlands. I became chapter leader of the Netherlands, and I got involved on a global level and during the summits in 2018 and 11. 2015, I was chairing the OWASP AppSec conference in Amsterdam, and I told my wife, this is the last thing I will do for OWASP. I'm totally done with it. And
long story short,
she looked at me, smiled, and said, "Yes, sure." And 3 years later, I was a member of the board of directors. I have been chairman of the board of directors. Now I'm a member at large, and I just got elected for another 2 years. So 21 and 22, I also will be in the board. And then,
well done, congratulations. We need more of Martin, unfortunately for your wife.
Oh, good for my wife. There's only one Martin is enough for the world.
No, but that's good. And I completely share your view on OWASP. And I've been, I actually came very late on, I encountered very late on OWASP. I was more with the Cloud Security Alliance. And I was blown away by the amount of open source and contribution and good quality of project. I mean, some of the flagship projects are really, really up to enterprise level. So that they're really, and the organization is getting there with politics and with emotion that we're not going to divulge and explore.
No, we can address that. I think you never should hide it. I think, yes, everything you do with passion, you get frustrations by it. So, and people can handle frustrations better than others.
Yeah.
When you're a more emotional person, then it's very easy that your frustrations overcome your response. And that's unfortunately what people can set up on the mailing list. When we see ours, it's only by head, there's not even 7 staff members worldwide. The rest is all volunteering. So that's an advantage. It's the flexibility, it's the passion, it's the involvement. On the other side, we have to become also more regulated. And regulated, people always think that regulated is limiting, but I see regulation as enabling.
Mm-hmm.
My analogy I use is it's like when you do a sport or like play soccer, for whatever sport you do, you have rules. The rules are not there to stop the game, but to enable the game, that everybody knows what to expect from each other. And I think there we have a long way to go with OWASP, and also professionalizing for the people who are trusting OWASP, because we have the consistency over the project, alignment over the project. There's a lot to do. And when you compare it, for example, with SCAS or the IFS, all these other organizations where you have a heavy contribution, so you have more time and money to do stuff, and here it's all volunteers. So it's still, as we talked about it before, whenever I go somewhere, I meet other people from OWASP, or I meet the community, or people I talk about OWASP, and people say thank you. That's a rewarding part.
Yes,
of course. Yeah,
but it is emotional, and it's a big organization. I mean, it's the good part that is emotional, because it means that people are passionate about it, and sometimes discussion gets a little bit too involved in personal allegiance, and that's normal. That's normal about like.
I don't know. Does it still exist? I remember when Gmail come up and Google had this "don't send a mail in directly" button. So when you on Saturday night when you had a beer and you were like emotional, and you wrote this email, you send it, but it was not really sent. So you had a time to think about it. Something that I learned from Alice in Wonderland, that she always does this courtesy. You know why she's doing it? It gives her 2 seconds to think first.
Yeah.
And I think that's all we should do. Like, in your brain, do the courtesy and think like, yes, that's a good question. No, let's rethink the comment before you answer. Yeah. And definitely when you have a global community, the global aspect of communication is so different. For example, I'm in Northern Europe, I'm German, and I'm South German, so we are really short on words and very direct. And then I'm in the Netherlands, there were people also very direct. So when they get to speak to Americans, when I'm complimenting, so for them it's like almost rude.
Yeah. And it's a global organization. You need to have tact, but you also need to recognize that our volunteers that spend their time and their free time. So I think I like the drama here and there. I think it makes it more interesting. But I see eye to eye with you the fact that rules and structure is actually good for us, because being an open source project and having a lot of open source community contribution, it can go like haywire very, very quickly. You can have 400 projects that do exactly the same thing and having low quality instead of having maybe one or two that are flagship project, and for who listen, the flagship project are effectively the one that are in the front phase of OWASP, but has more contribution and more review and more rigor, I think, to it. And I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, that's what always about the projects and even those level. And you have those people who are more like, what can I do? And waiting for answers, and those who, there's nothing specified, so they're just doing. And you need both type of people. But when you have rules and guidance, they help you to understand what you can do. So when you see every time we come up with policies, be like, don't limit us. And they say, no, the policy is allowing more than you do currently, but it's just the feeling of being, there's a guardrail. So, it's enabling. So yeah.
No, I agree. It's polishing and is effectively taking, as you say, the courtesy. So taking that 2 seconds to think about really the quality that you want to deliver rather than just delivering. That is a little bit my beef with DevSecOps or DevOps. Sometimes it's seen as we twist the velocity and the rapidity of delivering into production in dropping the quality. That has been always my beef with DevOps.
I had even talks about the DevOps Wild West. It's of course sometimes happens. When you look how long it exists already, and I'm really happy that it's more maturing. But still, you see that people come in, and you see the average developer's age is in the 2030s. So they don't think about 15 years back, and DevOps of Agile is that all. So why do we do stuff? What does it mean? So when you know why you do something, you do it better because you know the expectations and understand the complications. Right. Unfortunately, sometimes it's saying like, it's push left. We are in charge. So
of the
make it simple. For example, it's not a Wild West. You are not on high school anymore. You get paid for them. That's what you're doing. It's, hey, welcome to the real world. No, it's enterprise level quality. It's not a high school project. You try to get a good score and then throw it away. Software is something that sticks out there for years, and people don't realize that. Yeah, writing software for enterprise, you need craftsmanship, and it's not Wild West. And you need boundaries.
I agree.
I see as company, look at the bigger companies, the technology stack. You can say, we all do Java or Ruby or Go, whatever language it is. It's not like that, because then you buy the next company and they have another stack, and then the next company another stack. And now we have the cloud. So it's not like this is the one world. No, there are several parallel universes in DevOps. Yeah.
And even in startup, I mean, the counter argument is, there is enterprise that is big, massive, slow, a lot of rules, a lot of red tape. And then there is a startup where it is Wild West, because delivery is king, right? Instead of quality, there is the quality assurance, but delivery and going to market is actually the biggest risk. So going fast. But even in that case, you actually develop things in different stack, and they remain, because you cannot develop a technology debt that is even more monstrous than enterprise.
Yeah, it's not a new discussion. If I look back, I was a Java developer, as I said, 90s, early 2000s, and Java was known to be over-architecturing, this multi-layer of future stability. And Microsoft did just build those drag and drop throwaway applications. And there's no right or wrong. It's depending on what are you building.
Correct.
So sometimes it was frustrating because Java people could not build easy throwaway applications just there and quick and dirty. And sometimes people I know from the Microsoft world, they couldn't write enterprise application because they didn't know what happens under the hood. So Microsoft developed and they evolved, and same for Java people. But you see all these new stacks. I always say it's good to have the young people with new technologies. That's how we conquer the world as humans.
I'm surprised that too many. So from the front end, we had so many languages. I mean, right now we have React and Angular, and from the back end, we didn't have that much revolution. I mean, Go has been the biggest one of the latest. But then if you look at it from a security perspective, it takes us ages to fix Java stuff. And we even haven't started on the other stack. So I think that was the conclusion of one of the Black Hat. I think was one in the Netherlands as well, that we, as a security professional, we're always going to be on the back foot. And we can always firefight, but we're going to discover new things only very later on.
Yeah, see, development in development processes and methodologies. So the same as the security is leaking behind. So when you look, traditional security people, where they come from, in the beginning, in the CISOs, where like process people, they come from process, not from security. The CISOs in the past, they were like, oh, we need checklists, pre-flight lists, and everything. And that worked to waterfall. But when we went away from waterfall, what is not as bad as people think, then you have to adapt to the new technologies to a certain level, but not to Wild West level. But what you say, you cannot support everybody. And actually, I think that's right what you said. The quality is important, and as I said, we need craftsmen, and craftsmen needs the right tools
and the right time.
Yes.
And that's where my argument on DevOps saying just don't go and develop and throw code. Just think about the application, because if you do a right threat modeling, if you do a little bit of design, not over design, not waterfall designing, but if you do a little bit of quality, then you can go as fast as you can, because you're not breaking the architecture of the application. You can go super fast.
You know what they say? It's like hours of coding can save weeks of coding can save hours of the planning.
Yes.
And it's what we did in the past with test-driven development. When you write a test, you think about functionality, what it must be doing. Then so the code is smaller, code-based, and what it might code.
But it's annoying. It's annoying because it means sitting down and thinking about the application, what it should do, what input and output it should. It's boring stuff. So coding and throwing.
Yeah, but it's a puzzle. And when I was a developer, for me, the designing of software, thinking about how is the best way to implement it, that was where I get money for. So in Germany, we always refer to Kür und Pflicht. When you look at ice skating, you have the part, they have the mandatory things they have to do, and you have the free willing. So like sportsmen say, they are paid for the training, but the game they do when they play, it's for free. And the same for coding. When you think about it, for me, always it's the fun part. And when you look at every craftsman, you don't just cut a tree and do without any planning, build a closet or a bed or whatever, furniture. No, you think about what will it be. It's when you build a house, and the same level.
Otherwise, it falls down.
Yes. So we claim kind of the physical world structure titles, but we forget about the culture. If somebody built as I call it a bricklayer, they have to learn their job. They have 3 years of education, and then they go into the real world, and they are apprentices first, and then when they have several years of being working, then they can become a master. And it can be kind of the consultancy company kind of killed it for software development, because you come from high school, you're a junior, and within a half year, we have to make a media because I need more money to ask for you. And after 3 years, you're a senior. So like you're a 27-year-old senior developer. Like, what? 3 years. So you have maybe done 2 projects or 3 short projects. So, but you never ever had experienced the consequence of your design decisions.
Yeah.
When you have suffered from your own
decisions
depth and solved that, then you know what it means to be senior.
The pain of actually retrofitting something or changing a whole framework or changing or effectively paying off your technology debt with the bad decision the rapid decision that you make. And those are lessons. It's like a kid when he puts his hand on the stove and he gets burns, he's going to remember it for life. If you don't, and you keep on listening to your parents, you're never going to have that immediate reaction, right?
Yes, that's what we security try to do. We tell them, oh, don't do that because it's dangerous. And they're like, so we try to fix it with our back-location firewalls, or the silver bullets that never work. And that's what I say. So now with DevOps and DevSecOps or DevOps, the push left, the more and more responsibility goes to the developer. So there's more pressure on the developer's shoulders. So with the responsibilities, we have to give them the abilities to justify those responsibilities. Of course, push left doesn't stop at the developer. If you push further left with that money to designers and architects. But then for the developer, I think those security tools, between quotes, and I always like that Gary McCord said, better meters, because they only say how bad it is and never say how good it is. And yes, I work for a vendor now, but still, I think that not security tools, they are developer tools, because they are there for the developer to see early stage the code quality. on
I agree. But then, as you well know, as soon as you run one of those at the very beginning, like if you run a code scanning at the very beginning of a project, or at a specific stage in an enterprise, you're going to find tons and tons of vulnerability. And the usual reaction is, "Ooh, there are too many. They're too scary." It's like, bye.
200,000 findings. Stop production next 2 years. No, that doesn't work.
That's natural. If you go to the mechanic and you never gone to the mechanic and you never check your car, and all of a sudden you say, "Well, you have 400 defects," it's like, no, I'm just gonna ignore it. I'm just gonna drive out, and hopefully everything's gonna
one license will go over eventually. Yeah, it's also how we have to be mature in this, and of course you cannot fix all those findings. But what you want, what you said. When you have a new project you start, you will have findings already because all the dependencies, definitely now with the software composition analysis, all this insecure dependencies you put in your code before you write one line of code. That's there.
More libraries, a framework, and so on and so forth. And then
so that's the first thing that you get now better tested. Actually, you can verify, is this vulnerability actually causing problems how I use it? That's the next thing. So, and then what you said, when you have a project there already, you want the first static code analysis, and you get hundreds or thousands of findings. You don't have to boil the sea. This is actually how the world is. And I always have like the analogy of high jumping because that's something I never will achieve. I have a gravity challenge to do high jumping.
Yeah, we were discussing this.
So, and what you do is you put a bar and look where you are, and not on the high world record. So when you do the first scan, it's just to determine where is your bar, and that's something you don't stop developing. But then you see like the critical and the most problematic, and don't go and fix the symptoms. It's like when you have chicken pox, you don't fix everything with the stuff you put on the symptoms that come out of your skin, but you look at the cure of the whole. So maybe, hey, I have a lot of SQL injection problems. Maybe we should have a wrapper class like an ORM tool that has been used. So don't try to fix the symptoms. Try to fix
the category of problems.
So on security category, look at if you have an XS problems. Hey, output handling is a problem. So what can we do there? Output encoding. That's something you can then very easily improve and make better. And of course, in that thing, what I said, that developers, they should use a tool, and the security team should evolve to mentoring. Because when you wait for security time, it's always outnumbered. They're always busy because they're really good content developers. So give the tool developers and mentoring them and monitoring them if they're using how to use it.
Yeah.
Then they will with their friends, because then you come together with them solutions that not fixing 100,000 XS, but implementing one solution for all the XS problems. Yes.
Yeah, start solving the category problem. But as we rightfully said, you need to start focusing on the category. But what would be your suggestion to any DevSecOps or security person that want to start this journey to actually let them give this message of take a step back? I usually have a saying. I say, don't get used by the tool, but use the tool as a tool.
Definitely.
So
yeah.
Don't hit yourself with a hammer. Just use the hammer as a hammer and recognize it's a hammer, and that if you hammer it in the right way, then you get the right result.
You see, at this stage, we see a lot of new tools, and they claim, look, we don't find everything, but we find it fast, and we can do it very early. And of course, the open source tools. I'm really, I live OWASP, and I'm really a big fan of OWASP open source tooling and free tooling and SAP. Yes, you need them, and having quick results, it's important. But is that something you trust your enterprise on? Mm-hmm. And that's a difference. So if you really want to know if everything is found that can be found, then you have to invest more time. So yes, those free tools or cheap tools, quick tools, use them what you want. But then
better than nothing.
Asynchronous, offline, run also the professional tools, because they have to support, as you said, all the different languages. To see the most tools are really quick, but it's only supposed like the hip languages are only a part different version. So the enterprise tools, they have like 20, 30 languages they support in different versions. That makes a big difference. That's why they're not for free. So they have to
and researchers that sits behind and actually do the legwork and reduce the false positive, because that's the other big headache, that as soon as you get a report and you start going through a report of 300 pages and you see that maybe the initial 4 or 5, maybe SQL injection, and you haven't even implemented the database. And as a developer, you get frustrated and you say, yeah, that's crap.
Yeah, and that's one thing. So there's also the whole data flow,
yes,
in-depth inspection of the code. But all you do that is not to have 100% of security gone. No, actually what you free is the resource of your security professionals.
Correct.
Because they don't have to run those tools and find those
manually.
Everything, and report manually everything that you could have found very early with a tool. So they can actually focus on that, what you cannot find by the tool. That's the functional, the multi-stage security things. The over different applications, process flow vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
Therefore, you have the human need and human brain, but those brains' power got wasted for still since the 70s. We have SQLi. This should be solved in the language. That shouldn't be possible anymore.
True, but we also have a lot of historic language that are old. And that was actually the argument of, okay, yeah, we can solve vulnerability by using a modern framework, or a lot of modern frameworks have actually solved the vulnerability by default, by inserting the control in the language. But we're also going to carry a lot of legacy stuff. So we always going to
legacy. Yeah, it's not only legacy stuff. If you look at COBOL, actually, it's very stable and secure for what it's built to. Yeah, you can laugh about it, but still it runs. And look at this, how many of the source code we have currently would be able to run still 20 years later.
True.
So that's something that so COBOL does well. But then it's less now, but we had this time with the web services, and then we built a Java web service in front of a COBOL application. Guess what? Or the web application, the web service didn't do input validation, and the COBOL had no idea what to expect and got all this
garbage.
This shit garbage in. And then it's like, oh, COBOL doesn't work. I say, no, it's your web service that didn't do sanity check. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's dependency and the complexity that you keep on building, because as you rightly said, in an enterprise, you start putting this Frankenstein of pieces of code, a different tech stack, and then all of a sudden you look at it from a threat modeling perspective, and you run away screaming.
Yeah. And I had a good talk with somebody who was threat modeling. When he's not the first onboarding with the team, he has the team there, and he always asks the youngest team member, not in age, but youngest who joined the team, explain the architecture to me. Because if he cannot explain the architecture, it has not been actually very clearly and simply explained to him. So we have a big problem there. So not even start with threat modeling, but just think about the process.
What does your application actually do, and input and output, and what it's supposed to do?
Yeah.
No, I agree. And that's why I have a little bit of a beef with the speed of development and the speed of code development. That is, it's kind of crippling a little bit of security, but I have two perspectives, because I always think, well, we are employed by a business that needs to make money. Hence, you need to develop things fast. And if all the competition is developing things fast, everybody's going to be forced to go faster. And that's why actually going full circle, I'm all in favor for regulation, because regulation is the only thing that from an industry perspective can say, this is actually the quality, the level of quality that you have to deliver, or these are the kind of rule that you need to inspect. And the business is only going to suck it up and accept it. So I think we need to do more around code quality as an industry perspective.
It's a very important point when you said DevOps Agile, that every code you release is production-ready code. That means quality, and you need quality checks and quality assurance. Yeah.
But how do you enforce in an organization? Is always, I don't know one developer that wanna release bad codes, but I know that organization wanna speed up the cut corner and go fast.
Yeah, I think it's something that actually the security industry kind of created in the past. So in the past, we had a security stake. I mean, the developer, I had it many times when I came to a company and did security, whatever service I did in the past. The first thing they back, oh, you do security. I was like, no. Like, hey, what? No, you're the security guy. I said, yes. But your team works for 6 months on the code. What do you expect I can do in a week? It's like, I'm here to actually enable you to increase the quality of your code because you know the code. So together, I will be the lever, the bar, to enable you to do what you didn't got the time before in the past. So they have a different approach. And people are like, hey, wait a minute, he's not bashing us. Because in the past, they came there, did in some different room, externalized, did a security black magic, and out came a PDF report. Like, what? And still, we do that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
The PDF report became an iron stick, and the developer got hit with it. So the next time a security report comes, they always feel the itch, they feel the pain from the last time they got hit. What do you expect them to do, how to react? And so in the past, security was always, yes, it's complex, expensive, and everything a project manager is not wanting this project because he steers on time money. It's nothing that's complex, nothing that's expensive. So try to leave security out. If that's something really, really, then you're lost. But you need to understand them that security is just another quality aspect. And in the past, I was one of those who said, no, it is not, but I have grown older and I realized, yes, it is. And also what I realized...
It's called growing wiser.
Yes. And it's a gray hair, maybe. It's more salt and pepper now. So, and it means that help them. And I heard people like, oh, I don't need much security because we only write this code or this functionality. It's like, no, there is a way how you write code. There's only one good way how you write code. And it doesn't matter if it's a banking application or it's an open source, but I know static website for your community around the corner. There is a way how we address databases. There's a way how we do output handling. So that's the quality. And when we have this quality level high, appreciate people because people who appreciate always deliver better quality.
I agree.
No matter what work it is. And then we can raise the bar together.
Hey, Francesco here. A very quick message from our sponsor and then we return back.
This podcast is brought to you by the generosity of NSC42 Ltd, your cybersecurity partner. Cybersecurity is complex and different for every organization, and you need the best tailored service to make sure your customers' data is safe and sound so you can focus on what's important, focusing on your clients and bringing the best and safest experience. NSC42 Ltd can help you during your cloud transformation, cybersecurity assessment for your compliance checklist on-premise and on the cloud. Want to know more? Visit www.nsc42.co.uk to get your free quote.
No, I agree. But how do we force? I mean, you mentioned something around AppSec and around security as an industry. Not everybody comes from a developer background. Actually, it's very rare to have somebody from a security coming from a developer background. And traditionally, people comes in the security field from infrastructure or risk management, so they don't have that perception of what AppSec actually means. So how do we solve that? How do we enable more people to actually talk slightly codes, but coaching really? But
the question, I just did a podcast this morning with Francesco on Shades Purple. She had a good one, like what do you need to be a good AppSec guy? And the question is, yes, you need all types, but you need the people who are able to hack and the researchers. But those maybe not the people you want to have to talk to your customers, the developers. It's the same in the business. When you're a business guy, whatever business you are, you have those people who are really good technical, but don't let them talk to our customers because they cannot talk. So you need people who are good in communicating. Maybe they're not the best pen testers, but they're really good in communicating what the impact is for developers and how to solve it. So humans, factor skill is very important. The ability to read code and understand the pain. I had pen tests in my first external pen test report one time said, oh, there's no security taken care of or considerations in this application, total rebuild required. I was like, are you kidding me? It's like, what?
What's the business impact of that?
Yeah, it's like, it's a .NET application. There is something very easy to solve SQL injection. So if I have one full FTA on it, it's like 50 hours to solve all the security problems you mentioned. There are hundreds of development hours in functionality. You say throw it away.
Rebuild.
Yeah, it's like, your kid is ugly. Can we have an open discussion now? No, that doesn't work. Please. That's still what happened.
I agree, and it's the perception of things. It's like, what do you want to achieve? You want to achieve to have the whole development department as enemy, or you want to have ally that then start implementing. So I always say, even if you implement one security vulnerability fix per week, you're a winner.
Yeah.
Because if you slap a development team with a bad report and they say, well, I'm going to ignore it unless you start shouting at me, that means vulnerability open for months and months and months. If you implement one vulnerability a week, that's 4 vulnerability a month. That's a good pace.
And I always have this like two-sided metal. It's like I had a presentation. I said, yes, I am caring and I like teaching and explaining. So I'm kind of Gandalf the Grey. And I will be the nice security wizard explaining to you.
Martin the Grey.
I get the Grey. But you also remember maybe in the Lord of the Rings when Bilbo doesn't want to show him the ring and Gandalf gets all dark and big. And I have this in my presentation, like, but if you're resistant to learning and listening, I can be this you shall not pass Gandalf if I have to.
But that's the last resort. That should be the last resort. Yes. That should be the last ending. Then that shouldn't be the standard approach. And I really like about the modern application security people that are more. We are stressed about soft skill and communication and really landing the message about what is important rather than you doing something wrong.
Yeah, we know that we have this DevOps CI/CD fast train, and then we have the toll gates that breaking for months or weeks that doesn't align with the one with the other. And then we have the security champions, and I have seen many times that the security champions became the one guy who wants to scan and has to fix everything. Then you're also lost because then nobody wants to be security champion. No. He's a developer. He wants to either do security or development. So when I have a developer and he's interested in security, then you have one so much, but don't make him security champion by default, or don't make him security guy, because then have a peer who understands security in your team who actually talks to them is so much more valuable than a security guy who doesn't understand how.
Shall we rename them as security buddies? I don't know if it's gonna fly well in the boards communicating. Well, I'm gonna start a security buddy program.
Yeah, about security buddies. Yeah, I think that really works because the security people has to become security buddies, and everybody is kind of security champion because they have to understand the quality of your code. And what you said, you only make them understand what it is. If I tell them that's SQL injection, but they haven't never heard about it, of tab napping, of whatever, they don't understand what it is. So they were like, "Oh yes, right," and turn around and walk away. That's like the hackers in the 70s. They came to the board with their command prompt saying, "Look, I pwned your mail server." Board looked at them. Oh, I see no dashboard. I see no pie charts. I have no idea what he's talking about. Pat his shoulder and walk away. It's like, ooh.
No, I agree. It needs to be, the language needs to be in there, and you need to understand what the problem is and get into the trenches with the developer, explaining what the problem is and how to solve it. It's like input validation. Exactly. If you keep on slapping developer with input validation, output validation, they will say, so what? If you explain, well, just pass this ring or put a blocker on this, input or forward.
Yeah, have a wrapper, have a functionality to solve it, and not try to solve it in every code.
Or have a standard library. And OWASP, by the way, has a lot of libraries.
I kind of hesitating when I should brag about a project. I mean, the most flagship but maybe that most people don't know, and maybe next one for another.
It's a catch-22 though. It's a catch-22 because if you have a library that's going to be used by everybody, there is a high chance that people will target that library rather than 400 organizations.
Oh, yeah. We know that there's compilable supply chain cleanness and attacks that we have to be aware more about. But I also want to brag about one project I really found of. It's actually from the friend of mine in the Netherlands, the brothers Carter and Glenn. This is actually telling you that helps the HVS, like what you do in a security thing. And then they have this labs where you have not this one big web code application where you can find everything, but it's like very small Docker images with, hey, you have a file upload. There's another bit item, what you have to think about, what's the problem. And guess what? Here's a lab. You can experience yourself with, of course, the solution. What could happen if you do it wrong? So they can see, they learn what it is, what the implications are. They can smell it, feel it, taste it themselves. That's very important. Yeah.
And get burnt on it, but
Yeah.
safely. So
Yeah,
just a fingertip, not the whole hand.
Yeah,
and not in production. And what's the project name again?
SKF Security Knowledge Framework, or was SKF?
Oh yes, okay. Security Knowledge Framework for everybody, and I'll put the link in the show notes so that everybody can check it out.
But of course, I have to also brag about my company, and you see what you have. It's first thing is to find the noise. You said false positive, but it's also the overall noise you have to reduce. That's something we work on, and everybody at competitors working on, to reduce noise. Noise is not only the false positive, but also having validate all the same findings 100 times. So there's also now everybody works on more logic. Like, hey, if that kind of finding I found the last 500 times I said this is a false positive or not relevant,
stop putting it.
501st time maybe, just maybe this 501st time again it's not. So that's how you should reduce the noise.
You become error blind.
Yeah, and how to reduce noise for them to focus on the really important stuff. That's very important. And the same is for training.
But that's a systemic problem. We always going to have false positives. So I think we can't reduce the false positive unless you test the code in live. So it's the contextual things, and is putting different findings all together and having that contextual view and taking the findings as findings. It's like the suggestion, the nuggets. They're not
exactly.
They're not a book of law. And a report is a suggestion that this is probably something you should look at instead of this is bad, you've done bad.
We found something, look at it, it's a finding. It's not, oh, that's wrong. It's like vulnerabilities. No, it's issues. And the issue means that you look at it and then you will define either it's relevant or not relevant. You have to fix it.
I like that.
And the same is also for training. Like, compliance. Compliance has to find the guardrails, and we have to also optimize. And we have the compliance annual security training. I mean, those trainings, yes, they're nice, but they are boring
and pointless.
Things. I had been asked to do a Java training once for a company, and that you kind of can tell where somebody comes from a developer perspective. So I'm there, and the audience come in, like 25 people. I'm like, oh, those 3, that can be Java people because they are, they have sandals and wooden socks. And the others, they have a checked shirt. They may be COBOL developers. And hey, wait a minute, this must be a DB. You can tell people after a while. And indeed, from 25 people, only 3 or 4 were Java developers. And I have this G2E secure development and defense design course. It's totally wasted. But
for people that
advantage is that when you're older, you're widely interested. So I can tell them on these examples I had, this is relevant for you, or this we are not relevant for Java, but it might be for the other guys, it's relevant. But what it is about is whatever you learn, and you don't feel what you said, you don't know what it means, in a context that's not relevant for you now, you will forget. Because it's like when you have a car license, and you have your driving license, your fresh driving license, everybody knows how it is. And I know in Germany back then, when I got my driving license, the same day I got my car, and the same day I was driving. And I haven't stopped driving almost ever since. But other people, they get a driving license, they move to a big city, they don't do the car, they never drive. So after half a year, because you never had the experience and the feeling for it,
you forget.
When you get in the car, it's all new again. The same with security training, because you heard about, there was something with SQL.
Something.
And yes. So training at the spot, hey, there's a vulnerability category in my source code. What does this category mean to me? How can I solve it? That's important.
And that's why I like the framework that you were talking about, the security development framework, that knowledge framework, that because it's spot on, is on a specific vulnerability, and is putting the training in front of the developer when they need it, when they find the vulnerability. And I think that's the key. Instead of just saying, well, this month you're going to all train about security, and tomorrow you're going to all forget about security because you're not going to see vulnerability for another 3 months.
Yeah. And then is some DB2 developer who heard about cross-site scripting. It's like, I don't care. I do the database.
Yeah, I'm back-end, so why do I care?
Actually, it's a quite fun story. Once, many years back, when I was in a company and I found people for my security task force, and I talked to a COBOL guy, and he said, oh, I don't need security because we don't process customer data. I was like, what do you mean you don't process customer data? It's like, no, all data from the database. We take it from the database, we process it right to the database. I said, oh, how does the data get into the database? He was like, oh, that's those Microsoft people. I think, oh, you trust them? Then he was silenced. Then you hear the coin drop, and it's like, oh, yes, everybody works with customer data. You never can trust data.
I love that story. But anyway, it's we ride on time, and it has been a pleasure. But I want to leave everybody. So we have a tradition that we leave everybody with a very positive message on cybersecurity or anything that you want in this particular period. That's the kind of tradition that we have. We talked a lot about the positive stuff, also negative. But if there is one message that you want to leave our audience with, which one will it be, Martin?
Yeah, that's something I learned over the years. It's like, the world will exist tomorrow too. It all seems to be worse than it really is. So breathe in, breathe out, stay alive, and get there.
And do the curtsy so you can think for 2 seconds more.
Yes.
Martin, has been an absolute pleasure. And for everybody that was listening, please check out OWASP, the fantastic project that they do. And you can see the show notes, and I'm going to put all the links in the show notes. Follow us on Twitter and on LinkedIn and so on. So it's been a pleasure to talk to you, Martin. And for everybody, thank you for listening in. This is Francesco, your host.
Thank you for having me, Francesco.
Thank you, Martin.
Looking forward to see you in real life again.
Hopefully,
Stay safe.
One of the AppSec conference. Thank you.
Will do.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, consider leaving us a review or sponsoring us on Patreon. It helps us bring on amazing guests and keep the podcast alive and free. Consider supporting us at www.patreon.com/CSCP and watch other episodes at www.cybercloudpodcast.com.